Joining me now in the studio is the author and journalist Rachel Shabi. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. Now, a lot of the situation here is kind of similar in some ways to what we had in 2008, you know, build up of military troops on the first airstrikes, build up of military troops on the border. How do you see this playing out in the next day or two?
Well, the Israeli cabinet is holding a special meeting now to decide what to do next. There is talk that it wants to pull in around 75,000 reservists, army reservists, which would be, I mean, that's huge. That's bigger than Lebanon 2006. That's bigger than what were called up for the Gaza assault of 2008 or 9. We don't know yet whether there will be a ground incursion, but obviously if that is on the cards, then this situation is rapidly escalating out of control.
I mean, it was politically damaging in some ways, wasn't it, the last time round the war in Gaza for Israel, because there were lots and lots of civilian casualties. How much of a consideration is that when they make those kind of decisions, or do you think actually at this point they're not worried about that?
Well, I think what happens in Israel in situations like this, and a lot of people were talking about how, because this was a completely avoidable escalation, to be clear, and people were saying that the reason that the Netanyahu government made the decision to start assaulting Gaza was for electoral reasons. In effect, he was sort of gambling the lives of people both in Gaza and in Israel for the sake of getting a stronger election win. This is something that has proven time and again. I mean, Israel has a history of this.
It was just before an election last time in 2008.
Right, but it goes back even further. I mean, 56, the Lavon affair, both Lebanon wars. I mean, there is a pattern of Israeli leaders going to war just before an election in order to reassert their authority. And unfortunately, that is something that does have a positive effect at the ballot box.
Tell me, Jackie was talking just now, Jackie Rowland in Gaza was talking about the business of the fact that they can still fire the rockets without having someone there, and that then the response targets the place where the rocket was fired from, and in some ways that might be a little pointless. Do you think that's actually a problem for the Israeli military, that they're aiming at places where things have already been launched?
I mean, the problem for Israel is always going to be that a military assault is no way to stop rockets. We're talking about a population that is under siege, has been under siege for 6 years and is effectively occupied. And we can talk about tit for tat and rockets and who started what, but the fact is that they are people under occupation, and military assault by Israel is not going to be what solves the problem. It didn't solve the problem in 2008, and it almost certainly isn't going to solve the problem now. The only way out of it is a negotiated solution.
And how likely is that? I mean, we heard that the Egyptian Prime Minister was suggesting mediation, but that didn't seem to kind of lead anywhere so far. How likely is it that Egypt will be a key player in trying to resolve this?
I think as well as putting pressure on Israeli and Palestinian citizens, the Netanyahu government has also put a lot of strain on Egypt's government, which is now, you know, the first time it's being tested, its foreign policy is being tested in the region. And obviously both Egyptian people and the Hamas government in Gaza want Egypt to step up and show some force in the region, but Egypt is constrained by its peace treaty with Israel dating back from '79. It's also constrained by international pressures. It has its own concerns at the moment, economic. It has a constitution that it wants to pass. So it will be very tested insofar as how much it can do in the region, albeit that there are other players now trying to get engaged with a mediation, including Turkey and Qatar.
Okay, Rachel Shabi, thank you very much indeed for your analysis. Thank you.
Thank you.
And don't forget our coverage of the situation in Gaza and Israel.